Okay, hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fortnite Mythbusters. Just like always, if you do have a myth you would like me to test in the next or future episodes of the Fortnite Mythbusters, make sure to go down in the comments and drop a comment of that myth for a pretty good chance to be featured. As well, guys, a couple of days ago, we hit 1 million subscribers, which is insane. I just want to say a massive thank you. And to give back to my community a little bit, I'm going to be giving away 25,000 V-Bucks with 5 different winners. So you have a better chance than if there was only one. Make sure to go check the first link in the description or even the pinned comment. You have a pretty good chance because, you know, it's not just one winner. There's 5 different winners. Also, if you are new around here and you are a part of that 75% of my viewers who are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on those post notifications. Lastly, let's see if you can smash 42,486 likes on today's episode. That would be insane. But without further ado, let's get right on in to today's video. Kicking things off, jumping straight into the first myth. The first myth is, if the Firefly Jar burns the chest, will the loot still drop on the floor? So if you don't know what the Firefly Jar is, it's basically a brand new item that was added into the game not too long ago. And you will actually get the Firefly Jar when you kill an entire group of marauders, and all of their loot will fall on the floor. When you have the Firefly Jar in your inventory, it's basically a Molotov cocktail. It's a throwable, and whenever you throw it, it'll shatter on the ground and fire will start spreading everywhere. And what's really cool about this new update is that the fire will even spread to chests, trees, as well as buildings. With that being said, when I tried this myth out in game, I went to a single chest up on the top of this hill and I threw down a Firefly Jar with the chest being at max HP, but the Firefly Jar's fire, you know, slowly started taking away that health. With the fire only doing 10 damage per second, I had to wait a very long time, but surprisingly in the end, when the chest fully burnt up, the loot still dropped onto the floor and the fire seemed to be extinguished. Going straight into the next myth, the next myth is, what happens when a mythical shark meets with another mythical shark? I thought this was actually a very good myth because in a real game, no one would actually want to sacrifice their 2 mythical weapons that they actually have in their inventory just to give to a shark to try out this myth. To do this, I basically queued up in a custom matchmaking and went to the Authority, where I then killed Jules and got the grappler as well as the drum gun. From there, I basically gave one of my mythical weapons to the shark. I then rode that shark around until I found myself another shark, where I then, you know, I had to drop the other mythical weapon into the water and hope that the already mythical shark doesn't eat that weapon. After there were 2 separate sharks who were both mythical, they didn't even seem to notice each other. There were several times where both of the sharks literally went directly through each other. They were within feet, but just because they're both mythical doesn't mean necessarily that they'll attack each other. Jumping straight into the next myth, the next myth is, will the locked Frenzy Farm crate open if you scan it with a Marauder? So in the last episode of the Fortnite Mythbusters, we try to open up this locked crate that is in Frenzy Farm just north of the main house. We tried everything we could to open up this crate. We tried it with all of the henchman disguises, Kit's disguise, as well as the Shadow and Ghost henchman, as well as, you know, just the regular Fortnite character's skin. But there was absolutely nothing that we could do to actually open up this locked crate, so there were a whole ton of comments requesting for me to try and scan a Marauder, see if that might be the secret to this. When I tried this myth out, I basically got an entire group of Marauders fairly close to the crate. I then knocked them each one by one and scanned all 3 types of the Marauders to see maybe if one of them will open it. Firstly, the Deadeye Marauder, which is the Marauder that holds, you know, the hunting rifle as well as, you know, pistols and stuff. I scanned that Marauder, but it did not seem to open up the crate. It still said scan. The same exact thing goes with the Assault Marauder. The Assault Marauder are the ones who carry the submachine guns. It still said scan. The crate still would not open. And lastly, what everybody likes to call the Boss Marauder, or also known as the Heavy Marauder. This is one that carries the shotguns as well as the stink bombs. I scanned this Marauder, but the crate still would not open, and we still have no clue how we actually open up this crate. Going straight into the next myth, the next myth is, what happens when you throw a chug splash at a burning building or even the tree? Will the splash put the fire out? So you guys already saw earlier on in today's episode what the Firefly Jar actually does, so I don't need to re-explain all of that. So when I tried this myth out, I had 2 Firefly Jars left. The very first one I threw at this group of trees, and as soon as, you know, the fire starts to spread, it will go from one tree to another to another. It's basically a forest fire. I was actually pretty shocked to see though, whenever I do throw a chug splash at the fire, you know, when the tree is on fire, or even if the fire is just on the ground, it'll put it out and it'll leave, you know, this burned mark on the trees as well as the floor for the rest of the game. This is the exact same thing that goes with buildings, but the buildings is even more cool when the fire spreads because it'll go around the entire building. You throw the chug splash and it'll only put out part of the building. and the rest of it might still be on fire if the fire spread that far. I think this is actually a very cool feature Fortnite added into the game, and was something that I did not even know up until I actually tried out this myth. Going into the next myth is, since the flare gun shows you where enemies are, does it work on finding henchmen as well as the bosses? So the flare gun that was added into the game yesterday, it's not a pistol, it's not an AR, it's not a, an explosive. It is actually labeled as a miscellaneous weapon. When you are fortunate enough to find one of these flare guns in game, when you shoot its flare up into the sky, it'll kind of scan the entire area around you, detecting enemies, making them pretty easy to see. With that being said, will the flare actually detect henchmen as well as bosses inside of their own buildings or even outside? When I tried this myth out in game, I was actually pretty shocked to see that the flare will actually detect a boss or even a henchman, through walls and even from a very far distance. In this case, Kit had the crown above his head, as well as, the henchmen had the triangles, and, I shot it from a very far away, even outside of the compound, and it still would detect all the henchmen, as well as even if Kit was in there, it would still detect the boss through the building and stuff. So this is crazy to know. Going into the next myth is, what happens when an upgrade bench breaks while someone is mid using it? Now, with the upgrade benches being portable and you actually being able to break them and get them back into your inventory, it makes for some pretty interesting myth. In this case, when I tried this myth out, I dropped down the upgrade machine, and I had my friend start upgrading his weapon. Now obviously the weapon upgrading doesn't specifically matter. When he was halfway through upgrading, I then broke the bench entirely, and his upgrade fully stopped. It entirely canceled out. Nothing exactly happened. Just the upgrade machine fell onto the floor. I picked it up and we were able to go on our way. This is also the exact same thing that will happen when you are even side grading your weapon. When the upgrade machine breaks, it just cancels out. Nothing too special happens. To be honest, I wasn't really expecting much from this myth, but there was a whole ton of people actually requesting it, so I definitely had to try it out for you guys. Going straight into the next myth is, do sharks gain HP from slurp chucks? Now, a couple episodes ago, we actually learned that sharks do not gain HP from chug splashes. So will they gain health from the slurp chucks? Because if they do, that wouldn't make any sense. When trying this myth out in game, obviously the first thing I had to do was catch a shark. From there, I made my way over to the nearest slurp truck, which was just north of Salty Springs. When I rode the shark directly into the truck, I was surprised to see the shark did not bite through it immediately. In fact, it took like 5 or 6 bites in order for the truck to even break. The crazy thing is that the shark will not gain HP when the truck explodes, but your player will actually gain health, the typical amount of health that a slurp truck will give you. This is definitely good to know in game, because the slurp truck, I've only seen this one not really ever taken. Nobody seems to even know it's even here anymore. Going into the next myth is, what happens when you drop your fishing rod from your inventory while you're riding a shark? Now, I thought this was actually a very good myth, because in game, nobody really ever thinks to actually drop their fishing rod while they're riding a shark. We've tested in previous episodes that you are not able to, ride 2 sharks at once with 2 separate fishing rods. So in this case, I just had 1 fishing rod. I then caught myself a shark and begun riding around. From there, after a little while, I then, dragged the fishing rod out of my inventory, and I was actually surprised to see the fishing rod drop onto the floor, and my player just hopped off of the shark. I also tried this myth out, when the shark is in mid-air after jumping, as well as doing the speed boost, and every single time you would just hop off of the shark. Nothing too special. Jumping straight into the next myth is, can you rocket ride a flare gun's flare? So unlike, the rocket launcher, the grenades, the flare gun isn't labeled as an actual explosive weapon. It is labeled as a miscellaneous, which is why it has, its own specific wrap and its own column in your locker. In Fortnite, the only items that you are actually able to rocket ride is either consumables or even explosives. So can you rocket ride the flare gun's flare? When I tried this myth out in game, not only was it extremely difficult to even find a flare gun in itself, because that crop's super rare, I don't know why, but even timing it perfectly to actually land on the flare and kind of rocket ride it was even 10 times harder. After countless attempts though, we managed to finally rocket ride a flare gun's flare, and it's a whole entire different rocket ride. Rockets is in just one directly straight line until it fully explodes. The flare gun, it kind of goes at a kind of like an arc, similar to like if you were to rocket ride a grenade or even a consumable. With that being said, I'm definitely excited to see some of the trick shots people are going to be recreating with the flare gun. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel if you are new. Turn on those post notifications to never miss another Fortnite Mythbusters episode, and I will see you guys next time.